Good morning. For those that may not have attended part one of this session yesterday, my name is Omar Khan. I'm a group program manager in the Visual Studio team. This is part two of a two-part session that basically is taking a look at building an ASP.NET web application using Visual Studio 2008 and ASP.NET 3.5. In the course of doing that, the goal of this talk is to give you a high-level overview of all of the new features in both of those releases. Just to recap what we looked at yesterday. So we took a look at some of the new capabilities in Visual Studio in terms of multi-targeting, being able to target both the .NET Framework 3.5 as well as being able to target the .NET Framework 2.0. And the key benefit being there that you can use the new IDE but continue to build applications that target the existing 2.0 framework in case you, don't desire to move your application up to the new version of the framework. We also took a look at some of the great new features that we have in the Visual Web Designer for Visual Studio. So great features for editing CSS, much more control over how the design surface generates code, and basically really good compatibility with the Expression Web product because they both use the same design surface. And then we basically spent the rest of the session taking a look at Link and kind of the Link to SQL Designer that allows you to map relational data to objects. We didn't cover new ASP.NET Control, so I'll be doing that when we start today, and we'll be taking a look at a few new controls that I think are very useful, mainly around data. So the list view control, the data pager, and the link data source. We'll also be spending some time taking a look at much improved JavaScript support inside of the Visual Studio IDE. The JavaScript editor, for people that do a lot of JavaScript, we really don't have a lot of capabilities in Visual Studio 2005 for JavaScript editing. I think there's some very, very basic IntelliSense and colorization. With Visual Studio 2008, we've made a great amount of improvement around the IntelliSense, so you get much better IntelliSense with JavaScript. As well, we've integrated capabilities in terms of understanding the ASP.NET AJAX framework when you're using JavaScript to code. The other things that we've done is improve debugging quite a bit. So debugging is something that has always been available. JavaScript debugging has always been available in the Visual Studio IDE. The challenge has been to actually figure out how to configure it to use it. Many people just get stuck figuring out what are the right settings to enable in IE and in Visual Studio to get the debugging experience for JavaScript to actually work. And as a result, not many people have used it. So we've greatly improved that experience in Visual Studio 2008. We'll take a look at that as well. We'll talk a little bit about ASP.NET AJAX. ASP.NET AJAX has already shipped. The version 1.0 shipped January of this year. And all of those capabilities plus some improvements have been integrated into ASP.NET 3.5. So it was previously available as an add-on to ASP.NET. All of those capabilities now ship in ASP.NET 3.5. And then finally, we'll spend a little bit of time today taking a look at some of the nice new features that IIS 7 has in terms of better administration, as well as some great new extensible capabilities that the IIS 7 server provides. So let's start by talking a little bit about some of the new data controls that ship in ASP.NET. There's three controls that I'm going to highlight. The first one is the list view control. The list view control is very, very useful if you want control over how the markup is going to get generated in your page. And that was a theme that I talked about yesterday, where we were designing a page where we were styling it and we didn't want to affect the structure of the document. Similarly, if you use controls like the grid view or the data list today, you'll notice that they actually put out quite a bit of styling and structure, and sometimes it's not what you want. You actually want full control over the code that's being generated. Well, there is an option today to go ahead and use the repeater control, which ships in ASP.NET, but it has its limitations. So basically, the list view control gives you the same flexibility and power that the repeater control has, but many more capabilities in terms of better integration with the data model in ASP.NET and also better integration with the design surface in Visual Studio. The other control we're going to talk about is the linked data source. The linked data source basically lets you, it's a standard ASP.NET data source. And it lets you bind any ASP.NET data control to a link to SQL class, basically the classes that were generated by the data layer that we created yesterday. And then finally, the data pager control is a really nice control that allows you to page elements within any ASP.NET data control. So either a grid view or a list view. You can use a separate data pager that then can bind to that visual control. And the data pager gives you full control over how you want your paging to work and also how you want your paging to look. So it's fully templated. You can basically create paging in any style that you want, and then it works directly with the ASP.NET data controls. So let's just go ahead and take a look at how those things work. So I'll switch over to Visual Studio here. So we're going to basically, what I did is I copied off the application as we left it yesterday. And I'll take all of these files. I'll basically post the files at the end of yesterday's session, kind of the state of the application then. I'll also post the files as we started, so basically the beginning state, and then I'll post the file for the finished state. So you'll kind of have a copy of this application if you want to refer to it later. So I'm basically starting off where we left off, and what we want to do now is basically what we did yesterday was we took a look at link, and we also took a look at the link to SQL Designer to see how we could map a database into objects. Now what we want to do is we want to kind of take those concepts and integrate them into this application that we're building. When we looked at this yesterday, basically what we did is we took this unordered list of items and we used some CSS to style it in a tabular format. And that's really nice. But typically what you're doing in a web application is you are building something like this from a database. It's interactive, it's dynamic, it's not static like the content that's represented in this page. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the static content and make a dynamic version of it that comes out of a database and use the list view control to render it effectively using the exact same markup that we have here. So if I went ahead and used data list today, it would probably generate some kind of table structure for me and put some styling on that. And typically what I want is I want to exactly generate the same content that I have here, but generate it dynamically based out of a database. So what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and add a list view control. So if you look at the toolbox here, in the data section, there's a new control called list view. If you're targeting 3.5, obviously Visual Studio is going to show that for you. We'll go ahead and drag one of those out. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and create some templates. So the list view is fully templated, so what we can do is just go ahead and define what we want the structure to look like. The first thing you want to do is you want to define a layout template. And the layout template basically defines kind of the outer structure that your repeating section is going to be repeated within. So in this case, what we're going to define is the unordered list as the layout template, and then we'll repeat within that. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this list over. And what we'll do is we'll close it out. And the other thing I want to do is I basically want to add a placeholder control. And what the placeholder control lets me do is it basically defines the area that we're going to go ahead and add the repeating item template inside of. So we need to give it an ID of item placeholder. And that basically now defines kind of the outer layout of the template that I'm going to be using for this data control. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and create an item template. And the item template is going to define the repeating part of the list view that I'm generating here. So what we can do once again is just go ahead and take one of these. We'll copy it out. And what we'll do is that's going to be the area that we want to repeat. So it's basically a list item that has the same information that we were showing yesterday. Now, that's basically how I want the code to look. One of the nice things about the list view now is that if I go ahead and go to design view, you can see that it's going to go ahead and render the list view as it would render when we view it in the browser. Now, if you're using a repeater control, if you go to design view today, you just get like a little gray bar. So that's one of the nicer things about the list view is that it gives you the full control over what the output's going to look like, but the design surface also supports the list view in terms of showing you what the output's going to look like. The next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and write some code here, and I'm just going to write it in line for sake of simplicity. And what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and use that data context that we created yesterday. We'll just run a simple query to go ahead and populate the list view. So we'll just do var query equals, and we'll just we'll do a where, so we can limit the set. And we'll just select the whole thing. So we're basically just doing some link like we did yesterday. This is just going to go ahead and select products out of the products table, and we're just going to select the products that are of a particular category. And then what we can do now is in our, actually what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and do it here. And what we can do here is then for the list view, we'll just set its data source. Oops. And we'll go ahead and bind it. So this is basically a very simple thing like we did yesterday, but instead we're doing it with the list view. Now what we want to do is, obviously in here, we want to substitute in some of the dynamic values from the database. So we'll just do angle bracket % pound eval. And for this, we just want the product ID. And over here, what we'll do is similarly, we'll do an angle bracket %. And for this one, we want basically the product name. So all we're doing now is going ahead and binding that query to the list view. And then inside of the template of the list view, we're basically just pulling out a couple of fields from the result set and rendering them out. So now let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So when we run it, oops. Once again, you can see that I'm a VB guy. So, oh, okay. You can go ahead and look at this real quick. I was gonna, it's worth looking at anyway, but, oh yeah, okay, I'm missing the extension. But one of the things I wanted to point out, and we'll kind of go fix that up, but what you'll notice here is the output of the list view control is exactly the output that's defined in the template. I'm not getting any extra width or attributes applied to this. I'm not getting any IDs applied to this. I'm not getting any extra styling. So it does really give you that very fine-grained control over how the output's going to look. Let's go ahead and fix that up so we can see. I think it's JPEG. Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and run that, see what it does. So, okay. Thank you for that. I got it. Okay. Yeah, so there we go. So basically, what it's doing now is it's going ahead and pulling that from the database and displaying it here. So one of the nice things is that instead of doing link like this, you can also go ahead and use the new link data source to directly connect to a data layer that you've created. In this case, yesterday we created that Northwind data layer. We added some validation to it. What we can do now is we can go ahead and bind to that data layer using the link data source. So the next thing I want to show is just we'll go ahead and remove this code here. And what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and add a link data source control. And we'll just go ahead and configure that. So the link data source basically allows you to connect to any link to SQL classes that you've defined. So we can go ahead and just configure that using kind of the standard configuration that's available in the data sources for ASP.NET. And what you'll see here is that now it's showing all the objects that I can go ahead and bind to. In this particular case, there's a data context that we created for that link to SQL class called Northwind data context. We'll use that. And then we can just go ahead and pick the object that we want this to bind to, and we'll go ahead and bind to the products object. For simplicity, we'll just go ahead and select all of it, but we will go ahead and say category ID, and we'll just pick the query string, and we'll just say category, and we'll give it a default value so that if it's not specified, we'll go ahead and choose one. And we'll just go ahead and hit finish. So what we've done now is we've gone ahead and updated this data source to bind to that data layer that we created yesterday. The next thing I want to do is in my link control, in my list view control, I just want to go ahead and set the data source ID to that link data source. So we're basically now binding that list view to the data source. And once again, the nice thing about that is that once you do that, the list view control gives you a nice rendering of what the output's going to look like, unlike the repeater control where you would just get a gray box. So let's go ahead and run this page, and effectively we're going to get the same result, but now we're using a different mechanism to bind it. We're basically using the link data source instead of writing the code. So the next thing we want to do is kind of look at some of the other things that the list view provides. So one nice thing that the list view provides is the ability to go ahead and also do updating. So not only can you display the data in any fashion you want, you can also provide update capabilities very easily. And we can do that very simply by just going to the link data source here and enabling updates on it. So our data layer understands how to do updates, and we can just go ahead and enable those updates through the link data source. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to just go ahead and add an item template here for editing, and then basically an edit template. So what we can do is inside of our list view here, just right next to where we have the product name, one other thing we want to define is basically a link that says edit, which allows you to edit the item. So we'll use a link button, and we'll basically use a link button to just put that edit link in there. So we'll just go ahead and add that here. What we'll do is in the link button here, just format it, make some room, and what we can do is we'll just change the text here to say edit. And one other thing we'll do is we'll basically just add a command. So we'll go ahead and execute a command on the list view, which is the edit command when this link button is hit. So we'll just say command name equals edit. And one other final thing that I have to do is define some, basically a data key name here for the primary key in that products table. So we'll just basically use the product ID for that. And so now basically what I've done is I've enabled both the link data source to use the update capabilities that are available in our data layer, and then I've added a few things to the list view to also enable that. I have one other thing here that I'll just copy in, which is an edit template. So this is basically a template for providing some editing, just to kind of speed things up. I'll just copy it through, but it's effectively another template like the item template here. that allows us to go ahead and define some editing behavior. So what we can do now is we'll go ahead and run this again. And what we'll see is that next to every item, there'll be a link to go ahead and edit that item. So what we were seeing before, but now we can go ahead and edit things, and that's my edit template. And so we'll go ahead and just rename an item here to tech ed, save it, and that adds you some very simple updating capabilities. And because we're using a data layer, because we're using the link to SQL class, people may remember yesterday that we added some validation rules. So if I go ahead and use a product name that's not allowed and save that out, you can see that we're giving an exception. Obviously, you'd handle this and give a better experience to the user. But the very nice thing about that is that you can define your validation rules in one place in your data layer, and anything that's updating data into your database, whether it's from a page, several pages, whether it's from a web service, you get that validation centralized, and that validation logic is in one place in your data layer. So that's one of the nice things about the list view is, unlike the repeater control, it gives you more capabilities such as updating and editing. One other capability that it gives you that's very nice is that although you have full control over what it's generating, you can also use a new ASP.NET Data Pager control to get nice paging behavior on top of a list view like this. So right now you can see we're showing about 12 elements here. But let's say I actually want to give a paged experience. So what we can do is we can very simply just go ahead and add a data pager control and tie it up to this list view control. So what we'll do is from the toolbox, I'll go ahead and in the data section, you can see that there's a new control here called data pager. And this is a very nice control because it allows you to do paging, but it gives you full control over what the paging is going to look like. So you can fully template the paging experience. We'll go ahead and just add this data pager here. And what I want to do is a couple of things. One is we'll just go ahead and define, well, first thing I want to do actually is define a class here. So, and we'll just say pager, so that's a class that I had defined earlier. We'll go ahead and define a field, and there's basically a templated pager field, so that's what I was talking about earlier, where you can go ahead and template the way paging looks, or you can just kind of pick a standard field, so we're just going to use numeric paging, and it'll just output a kind of unformatted numeric kind of paging display. And because I applied a class to this control, we'll just use CSS to go ahead and format that number. So we'll just go ahead and use a numeric pager. And the next thing I want to do also is that when I go ahead and select the data pager, you can see here in the property grid, there's a couple of other attributes you can set. One of the things you want to set is basically the control that you're going to go ahead and page. So in this case, that's list view 1. And the other thing we'll go ahead and set here is the size of the page. So how many elements do we want to display on each page? We'll go ahead and save that and run it. And what you see now is that not only are we getting the full control over the output. So if I go to look at the source here, once again just kind of showing that we're not generating any extra code. We're basically just generating the code that you defined in the template, but you're also getting this very nice paging behavior as well, and you're getting the edit capability also. So really nice control if you're doing a lot of data, if you're doing repeating data. The linked data source is very handy to let you bind this back to a data layer that you've created. And then the data pager control also gives you some very nice capabilities around paging. So just to look at some of the new capabilities there. Let's go ahead and switch back to slides. So the next thing I want to talk about is ASP.NET Ajax and the kind of support for Ajax. So ASP.NET Ajax today works on top of existing ASP.NET 2.0 and Visual Studio 2005. It shipped back in January. You can go ahead and download it and just install it on top of ASP.NET 2.0 and use it. And basically ASP.NET Ajax provides some core capabilities on the client. It gives a type system over JavaScript. So you get nicely typed experience, kind of familiar to VB and C# like programming. There's a serialization capability, so you can serialize web services down to JavaScript. As well, there's a common framework on the client that you can use to do common functions that abstract different browsers. So you basically don't have to write browser-specific code if you're using the core JavaScript library that's available in ASP.NET Ajax. And then finally, ASP.NET itself has capabilities on the server that directly target ASP.NET Ajax. And one example of that is the update panel control. For people that aren't very familiar with Ajax or are not very familiar with JavaScript, the ASP.NET server controls allow you to get a lot of the interaction or behavior that Ajax provides without having to learn that new skill set around JavaScript. So we'll look at those as well. All of the features that have shipped in ASP.NET Ajax 1.0 are now integrated in ASP.NET 3.5. So you don't have to install anything separately. If you install Visual Studio 2008 and ASP.NET 3.5, the framework comes pre-configured with the ability to do all the Ajax functionality. There's also, on top of that, a separate control toolkit that you can go ahead and download, the ASP.NET Ajax Control Toolkit. It's very useful. It basically is an open source project where there's Microsoft as well as external contribution to it, and you can basically go ahead and look at all the source for those controls. And basically it contains a lot of useful behaviors and kind of capabilities. I believe this number is probably a little bit older. It's even more than 40 controls now. We'll take a look at some of those controls as well and see how Visual Studio allows you to integrate that library and kind of use it very easily inside of the IDE. And then finally, on the Visual Studio side, we've also added a lot of support for Ajax. So you can go ahead and kind of use the ASP.NET capabilities to get some Ajax behavior. You can use server controls to get some Ajax behavior. But a lot of people are on the cutting edge. They're either writing their own libraries or they're just doing a lot of JavaScript. And what we've done in Visual Studio is we've really beefed up the support that we have for JavaScript editing. The IntelliSense is much better. So we basically give you IntelliSense based on kind of a dynamic, JavaScript's a dynamic language, so we infer kind of the types and give you IntelliSense based on that. And then we also then have some special support that gives you a better experience if you're targeting ASP.NET Ajax specifically. We're also adding build-time syntax checking. So in the past, you really didn't get any syntax checking in JavaScript until you ran the code in your browser and you missed a semicolon or some syntax error. Now Visual Studio does that at build time. It does that syntax checking for you. We've also improved debugging, so it's much easier to figure out how to debug. All you have to do is just go ahead and set a breakpoint, run the application, and debugging just hooks up and works automatically. In the past, you had to go set a bunch of IE settings. You kind of had to run the page and then kind of find the magic window to go ahead and attach to the file that was running in the browser, and then set your breakpoint at that time and then kind of re-execute the page to get it to hook up. Now you can just set your breakpoint in your server page. We'll map the breakpoint over to the client page that's running in the browser, and you can go ahead and debug very easily. And then finally, I was talking about that toolkit that you can go ahead and download. A lot of the controls that are available in the ASP.NET Ajax control toolkit are extenders. Extenders are basically controls that attach to existing ASP.NET server controls to add more interactivity. And Visual Studio 2008 has a really nice design time that recognizes any extenders that you might have available and then shows which extenders you can and how you can extend the existing controls on your page. So we'll take a look at that as well. So without further delay, let's go back to the product and actually take a look at some of those capabilities. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and start kind of with the more advanced features. So how many people here are doing JavaScript, just a show of hands? Okay, that's good. So you'll really appreciate some of this stuff. And that's kind of what we realized is that a lot of people are doing a lot of JavaScript, and it's not a pretty experience. It's definitely painful. It's hard to code JavaScript. And any help that the IDE can provide, I think is fantastic. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take a look at an example here. Very simple page. It's basically just got an href here, which is a link, and it calls a function. And then we've just got a simple div. And what we're going to do is we're going to write some JavaScript. We're going to start off simple, write some JavaScript to basically go ahead and populate that div with some content. So we can go ahead and start. And one of the first things you'll notice is right away, as I'm typing, we get better IntelliSense. In Visual Studio 2005, you would not get this IntelliSense list when you hit F at this place in the document. So right away, we're a little bit smarter. We kind of give you IntelliSense in places that you didn't get before. The other thing you'll notice is that you're actually getting some icons that describe, different types that are available. So something's a keyword, a method, a property. You kind of get different types for it. So in the existing IntelliSense, you basically just saw everything. I think was just an object, and it just showed like one type. So you didn't get that kind of categorization that we're giving you in the list now. So right away, there's some stuff that can go ahead and help you. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to implement the load data function. And what we want to do is we'll go ahead and just grab that div, and we'll write some content into that div. So typically how you do that is you just go ahead and create a variable. And what you do is you go ahead and then most commonly people use document.getElement by ID. So this is very kind of standard JavaScript stuff that people do. And we'll go ahead and grab the div1. Now, one of the nice things about that is that as I do that, you can see now that the IntelliSense is actually picking up that this is a div. So I'm seeing properties that are relevant to the assignment that I've done to that variable. So we'll go ahead and just set the inner HTML and just say hello at TechEd. So let's just go ahead and run that and see what it does. This is interesting. This is similar to what was happening yesterday. I apologize for that. I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, it's doing the exact same thing. I'm going to go ahead and just start it again, just so we can get it executing. And somebody had mentioned to me why they believe that was happening, so we'll go ahead and take a look at that. But so basically, we're doing something very simple here. We're writing some JavaScript to go ahead and write that. Now, that was kind of nice. So, one of the things I showed here is that we inferred the type based on the assignment that happened here. So let's just go ahead and do something like div1 equals 10. And now I'm basically assigning it an integer. And if we go ahead and look at the IntelliSense here, you can see now that we've actually inferred that the type is different, and we're giving you IntelliSense for an integer here. So that's nice. One of the nicer things is, let's say, what if I went over here and I went ahead and did div1? You can see that we're still remembering what the type is kind of based on the parsing we're doing. This is, because of the dynamic nature of JavaScript, this is very difficult to do. There's very few products out there that kind of can do this kind of type inference. But we kind of do the best job at kind of inferring what the type is and giving you the appropriate IntelliSense around that. So that's really nice. The other thing you can do is, we're doing JavaScript inside of our page here. Typically what a lot of applications do is the JavaScript is actually written externally, or you're just doing a lot of JavaScript in external files. So we have an external file here. We'll go ahead and take a look at it. It's called my library. And all it has is very simply just a function, just to get a message over a network. In this case, it's actually not getting it over the network. It's just kind of a dummy function that's returning a string that it creates on the fly. And what we can do is, typically what you'll do is you'll go ahead and reference something like this by just dragging it on the page or adding a script reference. So in this case, we're adding a script reference to that file. And one of the nice things in Visual Studio now is that we can go ahead and get IntelliSense from external files as well. So we'll see here now that the file that I just referenced, we're getting IntelliSense against those. So we'll just go ahead, and one of the nice things as well is we're kind of giving you a little bit better IntelliSense in terms of what's defined in the parameters for that. So we can go ahead and just use getMessage, and now we run it again, we can see that we're getting the message from the external JavaScript file. So the IntelliSense not only works within your page, but it also works against any external files that you've referenced. Another nice thing is that you can go ahead, and if you're creating libraries like this, you can go ahead and document them so that not only are we giving you IntelliSense, but we're giving you more information about the capabilities. The ASP.NET Ajax library, all the libraries that ship in JavaScript will have full documentation. And the features that I'll be showing right now about how the IntelliSense displays that documentation work against that in the shipping product. So one of the things you can go ahead and do here is inside the function, you can go ahead and say something like summary, and you can go ahead and say this function really does not talk over the network, which is true. And if we go ahead and do that and we save this out, what we can see now is when we go back here, go ahead and save this out. Yeah, that's a. I think you might be right. We do have to write it because of the way JavaScript is dynamic. You do have to write it inside of the function, but I think you might be right about having it inside of the opening brace there. So we'll go ahead and save that out, and yeah. So basically, now you can see that we were able to write a summary, and now we're getting more information about the IntelliSense against that external file. So you can basically go ahead and document all of your functions. And if you're creating a JavaScript library, if you do that documentation, obviously you get a nicer experience here. Then you can go ahead and add additional things as well. So what we'll do is not only are we going to add a summary, but we'll also add some parameter information. So network path. And what we'll say is this parameter is optional. And we'll go ahead and save that. And when we go ahead and go back here, what we can see now is, oops. That looks correct. Huh, that's odd. I'm definitely using some wrong syntax here. We'll go back here and let me. I have a little a finished version of this, so let me go ahead and look at that real quick and see if I had some. I don't know. That's interesting. So we'll just save that out, try it again. Let's just go ahead and see if that makes a difference. Yeah, I'm actually, I know that I'm doing something wrong because I'm not getting the IntelliSense for the summary as well. So I won't I won't, I'm just missing some syntax here, but basically you can do a param description, so you can get some parameter description. You can also go ahead and define the return type. And so if you define the return type, that lets you go ahead and then show the return type in IntelliSense. So if you go ahead and document your functions in a library like this, you will get much better experience in terms of how the IntelliSense shows up on the other side. You can also, so one of the things that you do a lot is, what you'll do is you'll be doing a lot of coding in an external file like this, but typically you'll be using several libraries, and you want to be able to access IntelliSense across libraries. At runtime in JavaScript in an external file, there's no way to provide a link to kind of another JavaScript file. Basically, the way the hookup occurs is how the page loads each JavaScript file. So as an example, if I'm referencing 2 or 3 files from a page, they'll all be, those libraries will all have access to each other when they run, but in the editor and in the IDE, there's actually no way of kind of linking them together. So what we've done is we've also added kind of another capability here, which allows you to reference basically external files and get IntelliSense against them as purely a design time concept inside of Visual Studio. So you can basically add a reference, and what you can do is you can either give a name or a path, and the name is kind of for the built-in stuff, so you can use Microsoft Ajax.js. And what this is going to let me do now is go ahead and give me IntelliSense against the Microsoft Ajax library. And so what I can do here is, let's just go down here and say $. These are basically now things that are available through Microsoft Ajax framework. All of these $ functions here, like $get, shorthand for document.getElementById, and all of those things. The other nice thing that we do in IntelliSense is if you're using Microsoft.Ajax, you also get the nice kind of typed framework. So you have namespaces, and inside of those namespaces, you have classes and functions. So you can go ahead and program in a way that's much more familiar if you're using the Microsoft Ajax library. So that's really nice. So you can either reference the Ajax framework. You can also go ahead and then reference external files as well. So I've got a file here called animations.js. It's basically using kind of the Microsoft.Ajax syntax for creating a type, and we're creating a namespace here called Ajax control toolkit.animation. And so any libraries like that as well, I can go ahead and reference directly also. And in here, I'm just going to say, instead of name, I'm just going to say path equals, and we'll just say animations.js. And then what we can see now is if we go to our IntelliSense here, you can see that there's basically that library now available to me as well. So we're getting IntelliSense against an external file. And this is very common because you might have several utility libraries in JavaScript, and you want to be able to use the functions in all of them in an external file. But there's really no way in JavaScript itself to kind of link them together. But Visual Studio provides this capability so that you can at least get the nice IntelliSense if you are using those things together. So this is an external file. Similarly, if you go ahead and we'll just save that out. If you go ahead and go back to our page here, one of the other things you can do is just finish that off. One of the other things you can do is you can go ahead and do the same kind of references inside of your page. So we did the reference earlier where we can just reference an external file kind of in the standard way by just using a script reference. You can also then go ahead and add a script manager control to your page. So anytime you have a script manager defined on the page, we infer that that then adds a reference to the Microsoft Ajax JavaScript library and give you the appropriate IntelliSense. So if I go ahead and just add a script manager, and what we can see now is that once that script manager is there, if I go back here and look at my IntelliSense, I can basically see that now I'm getting the same IntelliSense that I was getting in the page there in terms of getting all the ASP.NET Ajax framework IntelliSense available to me, so I can do all the things that are available there. So you can go ahead and reference that. Additionally, what you can do is you can go ahead and also, in the script manager itself, add a reference. So you can reference other scripts here. And in this particular example, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and reference we'll just go ahead and reference the, actually I shouldn't have done that. We'll just go ahead and reference that. And save that out. Let's just do, there. Save that out. And now what we'll see is we're also going to get the reference to that library. So you can kind of reference both documents kind of using the script tag. You can use kind of the script source equals. You can use the script manager. And then you can also use the reference in the script manager. And as well in external files, you can use the comment syntax that I showed, which is the / reference tag. And then use that to reference external files to get IntelliSense. So really allows you to get IntelliSense across all the linked JavaScript files that you might have. The other thing that you can then go ahead and do is also ASP.NET Ajax provides the ability to go ahead and call a web service and then program that web service through JavaScript. So I've got two web services here. You can use either kind of the ASMX web service that's available, or you can use the SVC web service capabilities that are also available in Visual Studio. We're going to go ahead and just take a look at this quickly. All this is a very simple web service that goes ahead and gets the time and returns that down to the client. So one of the nice things about ASP.NET Ajax is that we can go ahead and, just like we referenced an external script, we can also just reference a service. So some of the services that are available inherently in ASP.NET, like the profile service or the role service, allows you to get profile or role information directly from the server from JavaScript. Or you can just go ahead and reference any service that you've created. So we'll go ahead and add a new service reference. And what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and reference that ASMX that I showed you earlier. So all you have to do is just define that, save it out, and now what you'll see is what happens at runtime is ASP.NET Ajax will be creating dynamically a JavaScript proxy to go ahead and call that service and get results back from it. But Visual Studio also understands the reference that you've made in the script manager. So if you go over here and say equals, we can see that we're now actually seeing the class that is going to get generated. So it's basically that web service now available in JavaScript. And we can go ahead and call the getTime method on there. And we'll basically just use a callback so that when it returns, we'll go ahead and set the time. So we'll just say on, we'll just call a function called onResult. I'm going to actually refactor some of this stuff out here. So what we'll do is we'll create another function called onResult. And it's just going to have the message that comes back. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just copy this code out of here, put it in here, and we'll also just take that. And what we're going to do is similarly, we'll just do, we'll basically just assign the result back. So we're calling this web service asynchronously. We're defining a callback and then just using that callback to go ahead and do the exact same thing, which is set the results on the div. So let's go ahead and save that out and run it again. And what we'll see now is that from JavaScript, we were getting IntelliSense against that web service, and ASP.NET Ajax has dynamically created a proxy for me, and I'm able to call back up to the server and get data back, and then go ahead and program it on the client. So really powerful stuff if you're doing a lot of JavaScript, both in Visual Studio in terms of the IntelliSense and the editor capabilities, also in terms of the capabilities that the ASP.NET Ajax framework provides. So the next thing I want to show is kind of debugging. So one of the things that has been difficult in the past is figuring out how to debug JavaScript, and we've made it a lot easier. So If we go ahead and just select this particular variable, one of the things you can just go ahead and do is set a breakpoint. This wasn't easy to do in Visual Studio 2005. A lot of times if you set this breakpoint, either wouldn't let you set it or it wouldn't get hit when you ran the page. So that's one of the nice things. And then all you have to do is just go ahead and F5 your document. And what you can see is it takes you right to the breakpoint and hits. So it really is as simple as just setting breakpoints and running your page. You don't have to do any extra configuration or any extra hunting around to figure out how to debug. A couple of the nice things that we have done when you're debugging is over here, you'll notice that we actually show you all of the running documents inside of IE. There was a different window that you had to find to see this. Now, to make it more discoverable, we just put it inside of your Solution Explorer so you can see all of the documents that are running. You can go ahead and then load any of these JavaScript files that have been loaded in IE and go ahead and set breakpoints in those as well. And the nice thing that Visual Studio will do is if you set a breakpoint in one of these running documents, when your session ends, we'll go ahead and persist that breakpoint back in the original document so you don't lose it. So you get the nice kind of mapping of breakpoints both ways, from the server document down to the document that's running in the client. Also, if you set breakpoints in the running document that's in IE, we'll map those breakpoints back to the original file on the server so that as you're debugging, you don't lose your breakpoints. Some of the other nicer things that we've done is you can go ahead and see that we get a little bit more information around the elements. So if we go ahead and just go ahead and look at the locals here, you can basically see, there's not a, it's probably better seen here. Basically, we're giving you a little bit more information about the type of things. So in the past, everything was an object and it was just listed out as one kind of list. Over here now, we can actually break things out into actually, you see it here, so you can see that there's different types. So you get slightly more information about what's being loaded in the browser as well, instead of just getting kind of a generic object back in the debugger. So you get better information there as well. So JavaScript debugging, definitely a lot easier to do, and it kind of just works out of the box. You don't have to configure anything to do it. So that's really nice. So we're going to go ahead and jump back to the slides real quickly. And actually, before we do that, there's a couple of other things. So, so this is kind of, if you're really good with JavaScript and you're familiar with JavaScript and you're doing a lot of that, these features are really useful. If you don't know a lot of JavaScript, there are also some very nice capabilities in ASP.NET Ajax that allow you to take advantage of Ajax without having to learn the JavaScript skills. One of the ones that I think is the most useful is the update panel control. So to highlight that, what we can do is we can go back to this products page and run it. And basically what you'll see is, we had the products here, and what you'll notice is that as we're providing kind of the edit behavior, there's a slight flicker that occurs across the entire page. And depending on kind of how fast your server is, the user may or may not perceive that flicker as the page is getting loaded in the browser. But it still definitely is something that you see and gives you kind of a visual effect that this is kind of an old web app that doesn't have a lot of kind of client-side interactivity. Because it's doing a full post back to the server and redisplaying all the content. The nice thing about the update panel control is that you don't have to know Ajax at all, but you can get some of the nice interactivity on the client that Ajax provides. So in this specific example, we'll just go ahead and go to the products page, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and add a script manager and an update panel and see how that works. So here in the Ajax tab, we can go ahead and just add a script manager. And the other thing we can go ahead and add now is the update panel. And actually, the update panel I'll add down here. And what we want to do is we basically just want to wrap that data list, or that list view, inside of the update panel so that as that list view is refreshing, we don't want the entire page to do a refresh in the browser. So what we can do is we can go ahead and just add a content template for this update panel. And then just select all of the content that represents the list view here. And cut it out. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just insert that inside of the content template for the update panel. So all I've done is really just taken the list view and wrapped an update panel around it. So what this does is now allows me to get some nice interactivity on the client without really having to program any JavaScript, although ASP.NET under the covers is doing some nice AJAX kind of JavaScript interactions for me. So when we run this now, what you'll notice is you basically get the same page that we had before, but when I hit edit, you can see that there's no flicker at all, because all that's happening is that we're refreshing that list view. We're not doing a full page refresh on the server. So that's really nice capability that you can go ahead and use with ASP.NET AJAX without having to know JavaScript or AJAX, take advantage of AJAX. The other thing that I mentioned that kind of helps you in that regard is this concept of ASP.NET AJAX extenders. And extenders are kind of similar to the update panel in that you don't really have to know AJAX to take advantage of AJAX concepts. The extenders wrap that functionality for you and allow you to apply them to existing controls in your application. To highlight that, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and create a new page here. I'm just going to go ahead and we'll just use AJAX web form, and we'll just call this extender, and we'll add that in. You notice that I picked a different template here. I use the AJAX enabled web form, and what all that really does is it just kind of pre-configures the page for me with some the script manager, which is required for AJAX. What I can do now is I'll go ahead and what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and put a text box in here to pick a date. And typically what's going to happen is that when you run this, what you want is you want a little date picker to come up. So if you run it right now, what you're going to get is you're just going to get the behavior where you can just go ahead and type in a date. It's really interesting. And I bet if I close it, a second instance is going to pop up. It's very odd. I've not seen that behavior before. I apologize for that again. We'll run it again. And so, the behavior we're getting here is we're just basically, having to type in a date. I went ahead and I downloaded the AJAX Control Toolkit. When you download the AJAX Control Toolkit, it basically comes with a lot of ASP.NET controls, mostly extenders. And what you'll see here is now that there's a whole bunch of new behaviors that I can take advantage of inside of my application. One of the nice things in Visual Studio 2008 that was not available in Visual Studio 2005 is the ability to then go ahead and figure out what controls can I apply these behaviors to. So what we'll do in Visual Studio 2008 is if you have a standard control like a text box, we'll recognize that there's some extenders that are registered in the toolbox that can be used with this text box. You can go ahead and then use the add extender smart task that we have there, and it'll determine which particular extenders are available for a text box control. And so any extender can define which controls it extends. Visual Studio recognizes those relationships, and then it gives you a picker to go ahead and extend those controls. We'll go ahead and pick the calendar extender for that. And what we've done now is we've gone ahead and applied an extender. You can see that there's a little icon up here that shows me that this control is extended. And then you can also kind of get a sense of that because it has a little indication here that you can remove the extender. The other nice thing is we don't actually render the extender. The extender really doesn't have any rendering of its own. It's just extending the rendering of this text box. But what we do is if you go ahead and go to the toolbox here, what we will do is we'll integrate in the property grid the properties for that extender. So not only are you seeing the properties for the text box, but you're also seeing the additional properties that extender provides. You can go ahead and configure the extender as well as that text box. So just some nice things that we've done in Visual Studio 2008 to better integrate the concept of ASP.NET AJAX extenders into the design surface. If we go ahead and, I'm just going to go ahead and save it and hit refresh here. What we can see now is when we click in here, we're basically extending this text box with some nice client-side behavior. So once again, you really don't have to know a lot about JavaScript or AJAX to take advantage of AJAX by using these components that ship with ASP.NET AJAX, as well as the controls that ship in the toolkit that you can download that's available for that. That's a quick look at the AJAX stuff. Now, jumping back to our slides, basically, the next thing I want to kind of wrap up with and talk about quickly is IS7. So we have kind of, I think, about 10 minutes left, so I might move a little bit faster, but I'll try and get through everything here. So IS7 has some great new capabilities. Basically, it's got much better administration and kind of delegated management of sites and configuration. The extensibility in IS7 is much better, and we'll take a look at kind of what the architecture looks like for doing that extensibility in a bit. You can do better diagnostics and kind of troubleshooting. And then there's also better capabilities for supporting web farms. So what you can do is you can go ahead and specify shared configuration and shared application state that is on one machine, and then have some front-end servers that all share that state and configuration. And those front-end servers can be completely stateless, so you can go ahead and use a farm and add and remove front-end servers as much as you like. So there's better support for also doing scenarios with web farms. We'll go ahead and take a quick look at some of those capabilities, specifically kind of the integrated configuration stuff that comes with IS7. So what we can do now is we'll go ahead and create an application in IS. So I've been using the built-in development server. It's been acting a little finicky, so I'll be gladly switching over to IS and see if that makes a difference. So we'll go ahead and just exit Visual Studio here, and what we want to do is I'll go ahead and run the administration console for IS. One of the first things you'll notice is that IS7 provides a much more friendly experience around configuration of your websites on your server. You basically get a nice kind of categorization and a nice UI for doing all of the configuration. The other nice thing about IS is that all of the configuration is integrated, so if I'm configuring authentication, for instance, there's only one place you configure authentication for ASP.NET and IS, unlike previously where you kind of had to configure authentication in IS, and then you had to go into ASP.NET and also do some different configuration for authentication. What we'll do is we'll just go ahead and map that website that we were creating into IS. So we can do that simply by just going ahead and adding a new website here in IS. We'll call that website Northwind. And we'll go ahead and navigate to the application that we've been working on. So we'll navigate to it there, and what we'll do is we'll also give it its own port, so it doesn't conflict with the default website there. So what I've done now is I've gone ahead and just mapped this application into IS. You can also do this from within Visual Studio when you create a new IS application, but if you happen to have started with the file system, you can go ahead and do it in IS as well. The other thing you can do is then go ahead and run Visual Studio as an administrator. This is one of the things that you'll notice in Visual Studio 2005 and in Visual Studio 2008 is to use IS, you have to run with elevated privileges, so we can go ahead and run with administrative privileges. Visual Studio will also give you a message indicating this is what you need to do if you try and use an IS or open an IS application. We'll go ahead and open that website. Instead of opening it from the file system now, we can go ahead and open it from IS here. And we'll just open that and really quickly run that and see how it works. So basically the same application, but now it's mapped over to IS, and we're running it from IS. So we can basically see that it's the same thing we had before.
Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add some configuration to this application using the IIS admin tool. So one of the, like I said, the nice thing about the admin tool here is that you can do a lot of configuration visually, and it's a single set of configuration both for ASP.NET and IIS because they share the configuration across both technologies. So we can go ahead and just look at authentication. What we want to do is we want to go ahead and implement a forms-based authentication in this application. So very simply, we can enable that. So we're enabling forms-based authentication. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and just add some users into this application. So we can go ahead and just pick some users here. It's interesting. Go back. Okay. And we can go ahead and just add users. So I'm just going to add myself. And we'll just add a password. And we'll just add some default content there. So I've gone ahead and added a user to the default provider, which is SQL Server Express. You can go ahead and configure your forms-based authentication to store users in any database. We have different providers for SQL Server, Oracle, any other provider that you might want to use. So we've gone ahead and added a user. And now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and also add a role so that we specify that there's a particular role that you can put users in. So we can also go ahead and add some roles. We'll enable roles here, and we'll go ahead and add a new role. And we'll call this role TechEd. So basically, any users that are in the TechEd role, we'll give them some different capabilities when they're browsing the application. So we'll do that. And finally, one other thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and go back to that user, and we'll just edit this user, and we'll add them to the TechEd role. So you can go ahead and do all this configuration from the IIS manager, but in the end, all it's doing is it's basically writing out configuration into your web app in the config file, and you don't have to be, you can basically do all this configuration just inside of your web app. You don't have to configure it outside of your web app. So you could very similarly just go to web config in your application and define all of these settings as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. The next thing I want to do now is I want to go back to my application and just add some login capabilities. So first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and go back to our master page here. And what I want to do in the master page is at the top, where I have kind of the menu structure, I want to add a link to login. So we'll go ahead and add a link element here. And what we can do inside of that link element is we can go ahead and add a standard login status. And that's just going to give us some status about whether we're logged in or not. And if we are not logged in, it's going to give us a link to go ahead and allow us to log into this application. So I can go ahead and add that login link. And then the other thing I can do is we'll go ahead and just create a login page. So we'll create a new page called login. And we'll use the single column master page that we had looked at yesterday. And that's going to be the page where we can go ahead and log in. And this is going to allow us to basically then log a user into the application. Once again, we can just use the standard controls that ship in ASP.NET to implement login capabilities. So we can just add a login control. You can go ahead and templatize this. I'll just leave it at the default content that it generates. So we save that out. And now if we run this application, what we can see is that we're basically adding login capabilities through the IIS administration and able to configure forms authentication very easily. I actually think I know why it takes a while. I have some setting in IE that it's trying to detect a proxy. Should probably change that. So let's just go ahead and go back to the default page here. Run it. What we can see now is that there's a login link here that allows us to log in. And all we had to do is go into IS, kind of enable that. And now when I go ahead and log in using the account that I created in IS, oh, okay. So that's actually I'm actually glad that it did this because I'll explain why that's happening. So one of the things that ASP.NET IS uses as a default provider for authentication, and the default provider is SQL Express. SQL Express only allows one application to be attached to it at a time. When we were adding the users here, it was attaching to that instance of the SQL Express database. If I go ahead and close out this application so it's no longer attached to SQL Express, Visual Studio also has, if we just refresh here, we'll see that that's the default SQL Express database that was created. It also has the ability to have processes detached, so if you get into that error, you can always just go ahead and tell it to detach from SQL Express. If you're not using SQL Express and you're just using SQL Server, you won't see this, but in SQL Express you do see that, and that's kind of how to fix that up. But if we run it now and go ahead and log in, I think it was just Omar K actually. We can see that it gives me kind of indication that I'm logged in and I can log out. So, so that's really nice. One of the things now I want to do is I want to go ahead and restrict only users that are part of the tech ed role to be able to edit the application. In this particular case, you know, I might want any user that's logged in to see all the products, but maybe only users that are part of the tech ed role to go ahead and edit the description of those products. So what we can then go ahead and also do is just go back to our products page, and we can add some more code here. One thing we'll do is we'll just add a simple function here called isEnroll. So so we'll do a Boolean function, and we'll just say, we'll call it check roll. And what we want to do is we just want to check whether the current logged in user is in the role. So we can just do user.isEnroll, and we can just basically provide the role, which is tech ed there. So this is a function that just checks if the currently logged in user is in the tech ed role. And then what we can do simply is that in our edit link here, which we had on the link button here, we can just go ahead and add a visible attribute, and instead of defining kind of whether it's visible or not, we can dynamically determine whether to show the edit link based on what role the logged in user is in. So we'll go ahead and I think it was called check roll was the function there. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll save it out, and if we go back here now, we just refresh the page. Okay, thank you. So we're just going to head. There we go. So we'll go ahead and save that out, and what we can see now is when I'm logged in, I have the edit capability, but when I go ahead and log out, it's not showing me the edit link. So I can go ahead and log back in. And if I had logged in as a user that was not in that role, I wouldn't have that editing capability. So being able to configure forms-based authentication, being able to define users and roles, very easy using the integrated kind of IS administration panel, and then whatever you do in that integrated administration panel, it kind of directly works with ASP.NET because they use the same authentication and configuration system across IIS7 and ASP.NET. So just kind of stepping back real quickly, kind of to explain a little bit more, kind of the architecture that we had with IIS6 was that ASP.NET integrated as an ISAPI module, and it basically wasn't very integrated in the sense that if you got a request that was doing ASP.NET, it was handled completely by ASP.NET, and ASP.NET didn't have a lot of knowledge about other requests that were happening, for instance, static file requests that were being processed through IS. And what we've done in IS7 is we've basically got two modes. We've kind of got the ISAPI or compatible mode, so you can go ahead and run ASP.NET exactly the way it ran in IIS6. Alternatively, you can use kind of an integrated mode, which is the recommended model, where all of the ASP.NET configuration and requests are now integrated directly into the IIS pipeline. And the benefit of that is several things. One is you saw the authentication configuration I did. All of that authentication configuration applies across all requests, not just ASP.NET requests. The other thing is if I'm writing any custom modules, so IS7 has a really nice capability of writing your own managed and native modules that plug into this pipeline. Those modules not only can handle static file requests, but those modules can also participate in any ASP.NET requests, which wasn't possible in the past because ASP.NET was in a separate ISAPI. So because now it's integrated as the direct HTTP module, any modules that you write can go ahead and participate in all the requests that are happening on the server. IS7 is included in all the versions of Vista and also Windows Server 2008. There's an RC0 available right now with a Go Live license, so if in case anybody is itching to try it out, you can go ahead and try that. And there's also some free hosting accounts that you can take advantage of. And so to summarize then, both Part 1 and Part 2, there's some major advances that we've made across the board in ASP.NET, in Visual Studio, and in IIS to kind of take web development to a whole new level with the Orcus release of those products. And IIS7 itself has some really nice improvements both to the administration and also the administration and configuration pieces, also very, very highly extensible so that you can plug in your own modules either using managed code or native code. And you can go ahead and take advantage of that today using the Go Live license and the free hosting. So with that, we're done, and thank you for attending. Since we're running low on time, I could probably just take questions up here so that we give the next speaker a chance to say.